In what is probably the strangest business move in the past couple of months, yeah, nothing definitely tops this. Hey guys, what's going on? This is NGS back again for another direct to webcam recording courtesy of the Logitech C920. What you're looking at right now is the brand new pop filter for my Blue Yeti microphone. So I apologize if it's in the frame. I'm just kind of lazy to move it out of the frame now that I've started recording. It's just me. Sorry. Anywho, I'm pretty sure you guys have already heard about this. In what is the strangest business decision pretty much of the past, I don't know, 5 years or so, Netflix and Nintendo have announced that they are collaborating on a Legend of Zelda TV series. And okay, so we're going to go over all of the official information that was released from this. So first and foremost, this is of course being brought to us by Netflix. Netflix, as you guys know, is the leader when it comes to online content streaming thousands of movies and TV shows directly to your computer, game console, tablet, smartphone, etc., etc. And something really interesting that they've been doing in the past couple years is producing original content. One of their biggest newer shows that they produce is House of Cards, that is rivaling popular television shows on TV right now. And since then, they've done some other stuff like Marco Polo, and another big acquisition for them is the Marvel Universe. And somebody just texted me right now. The Marvel Universe is going to be getting a couple of adaptations: Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, leading up to Defender series. So Netflix distribution is definitely an interesting approach to putting out content, because it's, I guess you could say, less riskier than going through TV and having to deal with all of those rules and complications. And this is a new avenue for them to put out content. But producing a Legend of Zelda TV series is just really awkward. Is it alright to say TV series? Because it's Netflix, so it's not really TV, so Netflix series. I apologize for the lack of proper terminology. But for this TV series, oh, there I go again. For this Netflix series, it just seems so weird, because Nintendo properties really don't translate well outside of their established medium. And by that, I'm speaking specifically onto film and animation from what we've seen so far. You guys already know the infamous Super Mario Brothers movies and the, various cartoons based off of Mario and Zelda and stuff, and they're just not good at all. But for the longest time, we've seen a pretty good success when it comes to the Zelda franchise. There's a manga based on Zelda, and it is very good from what I've heard. But as far as a live action series, not animated, live action, it does raise some eyebrows. First and foremost, I want to start off with why I'm so skeptical about it. Not just because of the deal itself is so weird and so not like Nintendo to do, because they are very restrictive of their properties, extremely protective of their original work and their IPs. I mean, look what they're doing with the YouTube content creation stuff. It's just, they're a very protective company. They're very Japanese. They're very old-fashioned. So all of this stuff of, it just doesn't fly with them, especially this sort of thing. But with Legend of Zelda, one thing that they announced that it's going to be really based off of is it's like Game of Thrones, but for a younger demographic. That's how the press release was stated, that it's like similar to Game of Thrones, but it's more focused for kids. That's what, they attribute the Legend of Zelda series to be. And, I don't know how to take that. I mean, I haven't seen much of Game of Thrones. I haven't read the book that it's based off of. I know people are about to crucify me right now for not reading that series. But I don't particularly see too much of the comparisons between the two. I mean, I think that in and of itself is its own story, and Zelda is its own story. I mean, I think everyone's just trying to latch onto something that, well, how could we relate this potentially groundbreaking series? How can we get people interested in it? Oh, let's compare it to a popular show right now. What's the number one thing right now? Walking Dead? Nah, it's got zombies in it. Breaking Bad? Nah, it's over. Game of Thrones? It's like fantasy. So there you go. Zelda is like Game of Thrones, but for kids. But regardless of that, having it live action, specifically, I think a lot of people would not be opposed to the idea of Nintendo producing animated shorts, animated films based off of some of their characters. Granted, it would be extremely weird considering Nintendo games aren't known for having stories. Let's be honest here, people. They're more about the gameplay than focusing on the story or the visuals or, you know, deep, rich characters or worlds or stuff like that. It's just focusing on the gameplay and, you know, you having a good time with people. So while it would be weird for them to translate something like Super Mario Brothers into an animated film, you know, what can you do with Mario for 90 minutes? You know, people were saying the same thing about, you know, Lego or something like that. And I'm pretty sure Angry Birds will probably be the same. And then who knows, they're probably going to make a Minecraft movie if they haven't announced one already. So I think they probably could do something for Mario in that respect. But it is very weird, though, because whereas the Lego and Angry Birds, they don't really have their own distinct personalities. You know, since Lego is just one brand, it's like, oh yeah, these are just these Lego characters. Everybody knows Mario, everybody knows Luigi, Peach, Bowser, you know, so they, even with the little character development they kind of have an idea of how they're supposed to act. So when you're giving this adaptation to somebody else, them having the reins and doing some potentially weird stuff, it will raise some even more eyebrows. But live action is just one step further. That's just like, whoa, then you can get into some really, really major problems, especially when it comes to things like source material, when it comes to certain actors and attitudes and them wanting to portray the character their way, not as it intends for the directors, and a bunch of Hollywood mumbo jumbo. So those things are very important things to factor into this whole situation. But I don't really see how it's going to work from a story perspective. Now, I did mention that Legend of Zelda has a manga, but from what I've seen in the Zelda games, what I've played, the games aren't really story dense. They're not really too story driven. It's basically a simple story. It's a simple point A, point B, point C, wrap it up. You have a very simple beginning, a very interesting middle portion, and a very satisfying conclusion. And that's basically the Zelda games. Sure, the Zelda franchise has a lot of lore to it. Everybody knows that. But they're not really focused on stories, which is perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine with the games because they're extremely entertaining and it keeps you interested enough. It's not like you're playing this Zelda game begrudgingly. You're playing it and the story is just so bad. It's never like that. It's just something that suits the situation. If they tried to do something crazy or even more in-depth, it would be, I wouldn't say be weird, but it would be different for Nintendo. So that's the only thing I'm worried about when it comes to this thing. I mean, it just seems like, how are they going to pull this off? You know, because certain things are successful because of what they are. And then when you try to change it into something that it's not, you get really a clusterfuck, to say the least. You know, something like that works for a Zelda game. But if you were going to make that into a series, a live action series, you know, for 13 episodes, 26 episodes, 4, 5, 6 seasons, you know, that's extremely story dense stuff. And, you know, it just seems like so out there for something that honestly you're going to have to be making this stuff up on the fly. There is lore to it, but for these series that have complex intricacies and, you know, just like any TV show right now, you know, it's just, there's so much that goes into making them, that something like Zelda just seems weird. Me being a Zelda fanboy, I know I love to see, you know, just like the Triforce and, you know, Ganon's rise to power and just all of that stuff, like the entire history of Hyrule, all of that behind the scenes would be really cool. And as of this day, we don't really know much more than the acquisition. We don't know any actors, any showrunners. We don't know anything about it because they just announced it. And there's a possibility that, like the million of other video game adaptations into movies and TV shows, it will not work out as planned because they get the idea, they get all gung-ho, and then it ends up in development hell. So who knows, that might happen. But then again, this is Netflix, so they have a pretty good track record of adapting the stuff. You know, a lot of people were thinking, oh, you know, this Marvel Netflix deal ain't really going to go through, and we have Daredevil coming in a couple months, and then thereon and all that. So this one will be very interesting to keep your eye on. Very interesting indeed. It's going to be interesting to see how Nintendo is going to react because, you know, they weren't really big fans of the Super Mario Brothers movie from back in the day. So are they going to have more creative control on this and say, okay, you can't do this, you can't do that, blah, 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 blah. You know, what is the demographic going to be? Because if it's Game of Thrones for kids, does that mean it's Game of Thrones for everybody? Because the Zelda games aren't just for kids, they're for everybody. So that there are a lot of things to consider in this situation. Anyway, I've pretty much stretched this video out longer than it needed to be. Legend of Zelda coming to Netflix. It's interesting, and you know, I'm more excited about the opportunities and the things that could be if this thing is very successful in a good way, not like a crappy adaptation that everyone's gonna see because it has Zelda attached to it, like those godforsaken Resident Evil movies. The live action ones, the animated ones are pretty decent. Maybe we can see some actual TV series based on, you know, popular franchises, you know, that have a lot of story dense content and lore. I'm not saying BioShock, but if we ain't getting a movie, let me get a TV series about Rapture. Just call it Rapture. Let me show run that. But yeah, post your comments down below on what you guys think about this. I am NGS signing out, and like always, I will catch you guys later. Peace.